Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm starting a new trend of wearing both colors of the HCIL shirt, so I hope you'll follow me in that. Thanks for having me. I've been here for, I think, 7 years now, so I figured I should probably give a plenary talk. So I'm excited to tell you all a little bit about my thoughts about stereotypes of aging and how they affect the design process, as this is really part of what I've been focusing on during the time I was here. Age stereotypes creep into every part of our design, development, and deployment process. Ageism also affects older adults' willingness to adopt new technologies that they might otherwise consider useful. So if we want to design technologies that will work for older people, we really need to know about ageism. Robert Butler, who's a gerontologist and the founding director of the National Institute on Aging, defined ageism as a process of systematic stereotyping and discrimination against people because they are old, drawing parallels to racism and sexism. And these parallels are useful because ageism is also very complex. It affects how we think, feel, and act. It affects us it works at different levels, the individual or micro level, the social or relational meso level, and the institutional or cultural levels, that macro level. But ageism is also unique. People move from insider to outsider status if they're lucky to live long enough. So everyone's going to be older eventually if we're fortunate. That makes it really in all of our best interest to address ageism because it's making our own futures better. But it also means unique kinds of dynamics occur, like people of all ages trying to be as far as possible from the stigma associated with older age. Ageism is also an interesting one because it is a pretty widely socially acceptable form of discrimination. Our discourse on aging can feel lighthearted and comical. You walk down the drugstore aisle, birthday cards, and you see lots of jokes about getting older as a bad thing. But the messaging of aging as something to be feared is something we encounter often in our day-to-day lives. At my most recent optometrist appointment on the intake form where I was talking about, do I have issues with my short-term vision, long vision, whatever those things are called. I'm not an optometrist. They also asked me, are you concerned about the fine lines around your eyes, right? So we're getting this messaging in different places. There are continuous reminders that these natural changes, the natural changes to my face as I grow older, are considered as negative attributes in need of treatment. Anti-aging products, right? That name is pretty powerful, anti-aging. It's something to be fought and feared. While we have laws in place to prevent age discrimination in the workplace, we continue to see bias favoring younger candidates and older people experiencing negative consequences like being denied promotions or getting laid off. And just like the rest of the population, healthcare providers also hold unconscious negative attitudes towards older adults. So we can see the effects of ageism in healthcare as well. Treatable pathologies can be dismissed as features of old age. In dementia, this can look like a doctor speaking to someone normally one day, and then as soon as they kind of get flagged on a screener for cognitive impairment, that doctor turns to the person they came with, right, their partner, and just delivers all the messaging to them. So with these examples as the backdrop, we can dive into technology and where ageism and age bias appears here. Probably the most well-studied form of age bias as appearing in technology is this not for me phenomenon, or older people rejecting technologies that signify as being for frail or elderly people. And we can see this as coming from that micro level of how ageism operates, the internalized ageism, where older people have absorbed this negative messaging, which is sometimes quite blatant, like in this help I've fallen and I can't get up at, and about what it means to be a person in need of this kind of support and want to get as far away from that as possible. Other kinds of internalized ageism that can appear in technology can be self-stereotyping about the ability to use of technology, like this well-titled paper, this quote about, at the age of 85, forget it to use technology. At that social and organizational level, we have a very young tech industry where research has found that ageism or age bias starts even earlier than other fields. So people talk about in their 30s experiencing age bias in tech. There's ageist assumptions of tech designers. One study looked at AI developers, at the kind of discourses they subscribe to about aging, of older people as passive, dependent, and inept. Older adults can also be perceived as digitally inferior, but also uninterested, which means they may not be offered technology-based treatments or assistive technologies because people believe that they won't be interested in or able to use them. At the design and policy, that highest macro level, we can ask how are stereotypes born here? So it can happen when older people are, we don't have enough data to train older adults from the AI perspective on the AI models. Our data sets and our algorithms, researchers have found, can display age-related bias. And then older adults are often not included at all in technology research and design. So a lot of these papers in gerontology, informatics, talk about user-centered design as the answer to a lot of these problems. Things like saying individuals of all ages should have a say within the design of digital technology regarding style, type, and user-friendliness. We're seeing researchers, government organizations, and companies outside of our field of human-computer interaction adopting techniques like user-centered design to make technologies more useful, accessible, and acceptable to older adults. And this is exciting, right? We do need to incorporate user-centered design. We do need to pivot when our users are telling us something different than the assumptions we came in with about older age. So can user-centered design eliminate ageism in technology, design, development, and adoption? Of course, after posing a question like that, I'm going to say, no, unfortunately not. So multiple studies reveal that despite designers' very best efforts, stereotypes of aging play this very powerful role in the user-centered design process. So some of my favorite research studies are ones that follow around user-centered design teams, either in industry, often in industry, sometimes academic researchers, as they try to engage in user-centered design with older adults, finding things like the conversations keep going back to what the caregivers are thinking, or keep going back to their own assumptions, even though they're bringing older adults into this space, right? So can we just address our own biases as designers and then solve everything? Unfortunately, again, we cannot. Because it's not just designers. The participants, the people we work with, are also designing based on their own stereotypes of aging. One example from a study led by alumni and professor at NJIT, Alicia Pradhan, she found that participants in her study were also, so we had a multi-phase workshop in this one, right? And people ended up designing for these two contexts. They designed for medication reminders and another kind of health focus in a study that was quite broad, just about IoT for the home. When it came to the second workshop for them to design prototypes, no one actually wanted to work on the medication reminders. So we asked them, why did you bring this up in that case? They talked about things like, I took care of my elderly mother who had lots of medications, right? So generally for older adults, health is an issue. They chose it because they thought that topic would be in common amongst that group. And we have other studies as well where we're seeing people kind of aware of trying to design in a way that's inclusive to the other people, but subscribing to ageist stereotypes themselves and not actually being interested in the topics. And then it appears in other ways as well. For example, researchers have studied the ways that participants manage researcher impressions during studies. So how older people interacting with technology display certain kinds of behaviors like asking for help in certain ways or kind of asserting confidence in using the technology. So they're not just doing the task we're asking them to do, but they're also thinking about the way we're thinking about them and their technology use in the context of these larger stereotypes around age and technology use. So what can we do? I think there's a lifetime of work on this topic, which I hope to be a part of. But we can also look at these different levels to situate some of the things we can do, right? So at the micro level, we can locate some of the specific discourses on aging that shape participation. For example, in one study I did, then a young grad student going into retirement communities and asking older people about their hobbies, because I was thinking of putting, sensors to support and monitor people's hobby activities. I had a lot of responses like this one, which says, I'm never bored because I feel like there's always something to do, always. If I had a few minutes and I wasn't doing anything else, I'd work a puzzle or something to keep me occupied. In the picture, you see a person doing a Sudoku puzzle while watching TV, right? People packing their days. People told me packing their days full of activities, all the things they were doing. And to try and understand what was happening here, I went to the gerontology and critical gerontology literature, social and critical gerontology literature, and I learned about this thing called the busy ethic, which is this almost moral obligation that people can feel sometimes in retirement to stay busy. So this is this, if you've heard of the use it or lose it mentality, right? So older people have heard of that too, right? And they're telling me, this young person coming in saying, what hobbies are you doing? What activities are you doing? And need to tell me, yes, they're doing this stuff, right? And this isn't to say those things aren't extremely meaningful. I have lots of hobbies, but we need to understand some of the things that are playing into the kinds of things that these interactions that we have with participants. Another thing we can do is continually challenge age bias on the social level. I do this by whenever someone makes a joke about aging saying, I'm an ageism researcher. You can't say that around me in a friendly tone. I don't know how well it's working, so people can let me know. But also it's actually work like we can do, right? When you look in the mirror and you see the Botox ads, right? I mean, there's all kinds of ways that ageism messaging is played out. We don't have to just accept it. But it's not just on us, of course. And we also can refine our user-centered design methods so that we're kind of mitigating some of this not for me phenomenon as well. One way that we're trying to do this here at UMD with Galina Reitz, Do Good Innovator Awardee, is we are involving older adult organizations in our classes. So she's worked closely with Empowering for Ages in an ongoing collaboration where seniors attend classes and partner with student groups to be mentors. We've worked together before with the Montgomery County Commissioners on Aging. So giving students learning user-centered design real exposure and real experience to help them learn how to navigate and to always include older people as end users, no matter what kind of technology they end up designing. At that macro level, I think we can really use discretion. So not just when we're bringing technologies to older adults that they might not have used before, but also when we're thinking of larger digitization initiatives or services that can only be accessed online, which is something we're really seeing outside of the US, to be really thoughtful about how this is affecting older adults and to always keep a diversity of age groups in our focus as people who will be using technologies. And sometimes technology might not be the answer at all, and we have to be able to include that in our scope, or technology where you innovate on the other side. So Robin Brewer's work is really interesting because she has done projects where the innovation kind of happens on the researcher does the innovation for the platform, but older adults can interact with, for example, a phone and don't have to then, use a new technology if they don't want to. So finally, an exercise that I do sometimes is I think about how it would feel to be seen as an urgent need of monitoring or fixing, to have my presence framed as an international crisis or sustained national attention on a lifestyle issue I have. And I have lots of them. I watch a lot of TV. I spend so much time on my phone. So scholars have noted that there's limits to how far empathy can take us, but I do think sometimes seeing this heavy focus on the things we need to fix for the growing aging population can help us locate other places to intervene beyond the individual. It could help us reframe our language, our focus, and the way we incorporate autonomy into our designs. Thank you, and I'm looking forward to any questions you have.